Okay. See, the clicker works. Yes. So 25 years of technology frontline at Greenpeace. So I started working at Greenpeace in the last century. Got the job in 97. First day was 2nd of January 98. So I'm going to cover a little bit of the history. So you get points for everything that you see on a slide that you used, and you get minus points for everything you've seen on one of these slides and go, what is that? And if you actually want to touch and feel, I got a few bits and pieces from my archive that I could find and scrounge and put together that haven't been impounded at one point or another. There's disclaimers. So there's not 500 of them. I've just hacked your brain because you're now humming that tune. So yeah, own views, observations, anecdotes, stories. Fairly reliable narrator, but you'd be the judge of that. Chatham House rules, but however many other organizations have a very large boat and do what we do, probably not, so it's probably a bit pointless. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on some of this, so just put allegedly between every word I say. And finally, yeah, it wasn't me. And yes, if you look at that blue building at the top, I was on the top during that action. Yeah, if you ever seen a policeman so happy as they were coming down the building, so we're on top, and we had to come down by one and be arrested, given the Miranda rights. And the police were lined up at the bottom, and you could see them counting up to who got the guy in the Homer Simpson costume to arrest. Okay, so as I say, I basically worked at Greenpeace for over 25 years. So that is my day job, but I've also been an activist at Greenpeace for that long as well. So part of my speciality was working on the small boats. So that's me driving a nice sunset. Yeah, about one day a year in Britain, I think. That's me probably soldering something together, wondering why I didn't bring it with me. And that's me being arrested by the Belgian police, who arrested, I think, like 200 of us at that day, so they didn't have any cells left. So we got to see the cellars of the police station, because that's the only place they had left to put people, which was great. We got waffles, it's Belgium, and the Italian contingent started singing opera. So that was an interesting evening. Greenpeace. So if you're not familiar with the organization, I mean, the most important thing to point out is it's a federated organization. So each of these offices is independent. I work currently for Greenpeace International. That's like an umbrella. So imagine 6-pack of your favorite beverage. Greenpeace International is the biodegradable plastic bit that holds them all together. I will ask questions about why that map is looking slightly off to you all now. If you can work it out, hey, well done. So there is many people in the history that I've worked with on, but I'd like to dedicate to these two who are no longer with us, Stuart Johns and Fernando Pera, and I'll explain why as we go through. So the 70s, this is when Greenpeace was first formed. And basically they bought a boat because they looked on maps and they found these great big areas on the old charts that says no entry. And that's where they basically used to do all the stuff they didn't want you to see. So they bought a boat. They had film cameras. They had telex, a forerunner of fax, believe it or not, and radios, because that's what they had to deal with. And interestingly enough, I would say that's why Greenpeace has had a forerunner mindset with technology and communications, because as soon as you get a boat and a radio, you get a radio operator. That's someone who looks like me, slightly more grumpy, tells you to F off, and they can do anything you ever wanted to do with a soldering iron. It's brilliant people. And that's what Stuart was. He started out radio operator on ships. He was a radio operator down in the Antarctic, so overwintering down the Antarctic. Pretty much could build anything out of sticky back plastic and a toilet roll. Another age reference, I'm afraid. So they went out in boats. There's some of the campaign history. And if you look a little bit about the technological milestones, yay, we got a boat. And opposition, none at that point. Well, you know, apart from if you count the numerous stories you hear of trying to get the film footage back from Barents Sea, Canadian Arctic, being chased by Russian whalers, coast guards. We probably upset most navies, coast guards at some point in time. And then we go to the 80s. See, that's it. We've improved. And again, a lot of this stuff is, again, on the radios. But what's interesting is we got FTP. We got WASIS. We got Gopher in the 1980s. And this is what radio geeks and radio people do. They were already into what communication was looking like beyond radio. So they were building networks. And I would say that, surprisingly, FTP is probably the most interesting thing that helped Greenpeace as an organization grow, because it meant you could move media around. And if you look at how the offices sort of opened quite rapidly over the 70s, all of a sudden you had people at the other ends of the earth needing to coordinate and communicate. I will point out, though, that, we got email in 1988. This is not what you would know by email now. It's like you had one email machine in an office. Steve Sawyer, who was the ED, I think he's now passed away, used to tell the story of you would queue up on this one machine to send and receive your email. So, slightly better fax machine, really. Also in the 80s, this is when it gets a bit more serious, I'm afraid. So Fernando Pereira was the photographer who was killed when the French blew up the Rainbow Warrior. So this is also what I class as, whenever I'm asked about security and what's the priority of security at Greenpeace, it's people's lives. And this is not out of some hyperbole. It's because this is what happened. So let me look at my notes, and it's Christine Carbon was the undercover French agent under a false name who went to work for Greenpeace New Zealand office as an intern. And she heard the radio transmissions between the ship and the office as to where the ship was. She relayed this to her two colleagues, French Secret Service agents, in a boat. And they basically planted 2 bombs on the Rainbow Warrior. And they went off, and Fernando died. So when we talk about a battlefield, I'm afraid that sometimes it's quite literally a battlefield. The ship afterwards was cleaned up and sunk as an artificial reef. And if you ever go to New Zealand, there is a memorial, and you can dive on that. And I have done. But that's another set of stories. So we get to the 90s. Yay, technology goes all wild. Maybe I joined, maybe not. Cause and effect. So, 1994, Shaw-Johns, we decided that we needed even better connectivity for more offices. And there was a few more offices that came online, as you'll see. So basically, in every office, we had what we called a black box, which was basically a tower PC with a Linux OS on it, connected to dial-up, Comet 16-bit, 32-bit lines, whatever you could get your hands on. And it had DHCP, DNS, all of those things, all remotely controlled. All your FTP, all your services for an office. Here's a box looked after for the whole network. So again, FTP, communications, remotely controlled. In fact, when I think it was Belgium police raided the Belgian office once, they managed to shut down the box remotely, and the guys in the server room convinced the Belgian police that it was dead because it wasn't on. Yay. And we had those for GL. So GL was the Greenlink network 1, 2, and 3. Greenlink 4, we moved to green boxes. These were a bespoke solid state hard drive, literally a green box with one blinky red light on it, which you just took, plugged into whatever you had, connected, IPsec tunneling on there. So fully open sourced, plug it in, away you go, secure communications. This is the drawback about radio operators, however, though. So Shure designed the green boxes, and we had one in the office, and it wasn't working. So I get in contact with him. He says, "What's the error message?" I'm going, "I can't get onto this. There's no display." "What do you mean error message?" "The light." "Yes, there's a little blinky light. He will give you the error message in Morse code." Right. So, radio operators, GL4, GL5 current version is basically virtual machines. GL6 is coming. We're now working on it. SASE-based system will connect all our things together even more securely. Yay. What else we got? Oh, the squisher and the squasher. So yeah, you're on a ship. You want to transmit some video. Ships, they move. Satellites don't. And if you've ever done any sort of satellite connectivity, you have to point your thing at the satellite. Yeah, so ships move, satellites don't. Radio operators. Yeah. We've got this video card. We can pull this together. Squasher. So up in use till 2003, I think. Sat in the basement of the office where I used to work. I mean, this thing looked like, made IKEA stuff look good, because it was just this rack, wires and cables and little screens and things. And it's like, I'm not touching that. But yeah, really, really effective. Allowed us to compress video to the point where you just got enough to beam it up to the satellite. So you'd beam it up from the ship, satellite, down to the office in the UK. By the way, this isn't using TCP or IP or anything. This is like when you watch your cricket game and they're broadcasting live, you rent your satellite time, push up your image, receive it down, decompress it in the UK office and put it into either the sort of Pathé News or whatever the news sort of distribution networks were. The squisher was, sorry, that was the squisher. The squasher was the follow-up. Yeah, like names. Which was actually more software-based. So when we did get to TCP/IP over internet, over the satellites, handshake, TCP over satellite, the handshake is too long for most software, so UDP. So we built software that took all this video, chopped it into UDP packets and said, go, find a home. And then basically some fancy algorithms would work out that bits were missing, so you only sent the bits were missing, because you were, at that point, probably Inmarsat B, maybe, Inmarsat B, even up to VSAT, you're being charged per time, not per traffic. So the shorter time you could spend, you could send it, the better it was. And what did that allow us to do? Hey, it's the French again. They really don't like us. So this was the French commandos raiding the Rainbow Warrior 2. And basically, because we had the squasher, and I don't know who volunteered to be welded into the radio room, but there were some people in the radio room welded in, were able to push out the video of the raid live, which, basically brought the situation to those who wouldn't see it otherwise. And that's even though they'd been given like orders to get to the radio room. It does help, though, that apparently someone had mispainted radio room with a red cross and radio room somewhere else. But, hey. Undercover again. So another undercover agent. This one German, I believe. I'm not quite sure of the whole story. And this was the UK office. So the UK office had the honor of being the first civilian organization raided by the Ministry of Defence Police. They came in, they had a machine, they plugged it into the back of the Novell server, and it copied all the disks. And they took away all the backup DAT tapes. So DAT, little tapes. And they later accused us of being very horrible and destroying the evidence because they couldn't read any of the DAT tapes. And what we hadn't told them is that we had tweaked the head alignment. So if you're old enough to remember head alignment, so that head alignment was very skewed. So as long as it was our tape reader writer, no problem. Anyone else's, not going to work. Hey. The 2000s. It will out-survive me. You'll see cockroaches in Fallout using this next. So I think this is when we really started, to sort of get into the playing with weird stuff. So, yeah, well, we got Left Hill winners. So yes, if you ever wanted to see a comedy in action, the Memworth Hill, it's worth a look at the video if you ever get a chance. One security guard trying to stop 20 people dressed in missile suits. And just to point out that Memworth Hill was an American military base. So, double fencing, people with guns, all sorts of stuff going on there. But we had worked out that transmission of video was easy. So 2.4 gigahertz originally was analog and free analog. So you could pretty much, on most of the old, if you see in the back there, sort of big cameras, you could take the feed from the camera and transmit it on 2.4 gigahertz analog, and you'll see various aerials and receivers. But pictures was much more difficult. We were still sort of just in the infancy of digital photography. We were still just about at that time sending people out with little drum development kits, so you would develop the negatives wherever you were, or you'd have to find a 1-hour Photoshop, if anyone still understands what that means these days. But developing the negatives and then basically using a scanner and scanning them and then transmitting them. I mean, the Nokia, it was internet connected, 9600 baud. You could FTP your negatives, but you better get your sizing right. And then so I found this Wi-Fi stuff about this time from Israel, beautifully milled sort of cast aluminium die box, with this sort of Wi-Fi stuff in it. And we persuaded a photographer to come and do some experiments with us. So if you can imagine a camera, firewire down into a laptop, 2 aerials sticking out. So we had 2 sort of omnidirectional aerials, and we gaffer taped him round. A very bemused looking photographer whose only question was, will I still have children? And we did actually manage to send about a mile to take a picture and get it transferred at the back end. But then we found these compact iPacks that could take like and I've got some there, PCMI, say, Wi-Fi cards. So we had a system, you'll see Guy Greggy there sort of holding the system, which allowed a photographer to actually take on a digital sort of card and send it, which made a big difference. So over on your right, this was the top of Nelson's column. So we were doing a protest. They were just reopening the Canadian embassy. That's taken on film, just normal film. So that film was not available until they got down to the bottom, where Pete, the one on the right, his girlfriend, came over and gave him a kiss, at which point they transferred the film. And if the stories are to be believed, it was in the mouth with the kiss. I don't know. Could have been just left in the pocket. Whereas the other one on the left is Kingsnorth. And that's where we actually had digital photography, and they were able to literally take the image using wireless, beam that down to basically, if you imagine a Land Rover crossed with a mad scientist sort of den with aerials sort of on top of it. And so you could actually transmit the pictures from the places where you were. So this is another one, basically setting up a webcam underwater. So this is the outflow pipe from a nuclear reprocessing. And yeah, so basically drop a shot line, do some diving, get a photographer to wire up some kit, coming back up to the top. And I'm going to guess that looks like a sort of Microtech sort of box on there. So it's probably Wi-Fi back to ship. Probably won't be to shore because I think it's too far out. And basically you've got an actual live feed from a webcam underwater. Yeah, so Japanese whaling fleet, they hide. They don't like people following them. So for quite a few years, the game used to be like, we try to find them, they try to hide from us. Turns out radar and the configuration of a radar on a ship is fingerprintable. It's unique to each ship. And if you fly a helicopter and fly at a certain thing, you can actually identify ships at a distance. So while they were doing that down in the Antarctic, me was wandering around certain places with a thing called Kismet. So if anyone remembers Kismet, it is a Wi-Fi sniffing. Because what we had identified is that the fuel suppliers had wireless networks. And not very secure wireless networks. And basically, I was looking for any information that would show out where they were going to meet the fuel ship. So 2 different ways of finding the ship at that point in time. Digital cameras. Digital cameras got very, very good, to the point where we had a photographer. We identified where the convoy line was. We had a photographer with a long lens who managed to make a picture of the credential sticker in the car window, give that to someone to print with a little bit of tweaking. We said, we're Greenpeace. That way we couldn't be charged with various crimes again. Stuck it in front of a hire car where we also put a couple of blue LEDs and just drove and joined the convoy. They got a bit annoyed about this. How we got through, I don't know, because the sign was held up by a pair of socks. Maybe that's normal. So, take your chances. Tracking e-waste. So we try to track things. Ships, e-waste, vans, whatever. So this was a tracking device that we put together inside an old TV. So the idea being that you took the TV to being recycled, and they weren't. They were ending up on the market. But how do you prove it? So this is what we did. We put the tracking, like most of that is battery. Because one of the problems with tracking stuff, especially over distance and time, is keeping power in it. So I did a similar thing where I was asked to track trees. And I'm going, trees don't move, do they? But apparently in Brazil, in the dry season, you go out and you do your illegal logging. You leave them there for 6 months till the wet season, when it rains, and then you float the illegal logs down. So this was the problem I was trying to solve, and I had, I don't know, RFID tags. I could put RFID tags on the trees, and then we can have a large van sitting outside the sawmill, and as the things go past, we go ping. And they went, way too complicated. Ultraviolet paint on the trees, break into the yard with a light overnight. See, technology, simple sometimes works. We get into the 2000s. What do we got here? Yes, get the photographer. More undercover agents. So this is Mark Kennedy.
Wanker.
Yeah. Basically, 1960s to 2000, undercover UK policemen infiltrating various groups and basically causing lots of chaos and annoyance. EDF Energy. They hacked into the campaign director of Greenpeace France's machine. They put a poison ivy Trojan, which they had slightly fuzzed so it didn't get picked up. And they got all the game plans for quite a few actions. We can't take any credit for finding that, because actually what happened was the same company that they employed to do that was also asked to go and, I think, hacked into the anti-doping agency. And then the French government got involved, said, hello, what are you doing? Found all the evidence, found EDF Energy had asked them to do some hacking. And so basically they went to court and they got done. But have recently overturned on appeal, unfortunately. So yes, so that we had hacking. The early telex machine was hacked. Well, it wasn't hacked, it was bugged. We had an engineer out to come and fix it. And he said, there's no problem. It's just the tap on the line is causing interference. And in the UK office, We had it swept for listening devices, and I think there was 12 in the boardroom at that point in time, to which the guy who came in and did it said, don't bother, just leave them because they will come back. And so policy after that for, well, as far as I can remember, is you never talk about anything in the office. Just assume it's being listened to, assume the phones are being listened to, assume every payphone, as was in the area, is being listened to. Hey, 2013, we got into cloud services. Woohoo! So this is Google's original offerings. It's a bit smaller than if you use GCP now. In 2008, we'd gone on to Google Mail. But we didn't trust them, so we put PGP over the top and then SMIME over the top. So zero trust before it was a thing, basically. So yeah, we got into cloud services. Oh yes, the boat got raided again, but it wasn't the French this time. This is the Russians. So they didn't like what we were doing, so they landed some more commandos. I mean, you can tell it's the Russians because they were abseiling down with machine guns. They took exception to the server room that we have on the ships and dismantled it. So those are the pictures of what it looked like. But by now we've got VSAT. It's TCP/IP based. We've got webcams on the ships, and all the photographers are prepared with connections. So again, all the video, all the pictures are immediately being uploaded. And then at some point, it's like, okay, ship's gone. We turn off it remotely, close it all down. Oh yeah, and just for fun and giggles, they blew the safe open as well. And if you're in marine environment, by law, you have to carry morphine in your ship in case of emergency. So they found morphine and decided to try and do this for drug smuggling. It's like, it's international law. Live streaming, yay, more live streaming. So this one, I think, was climbing the Shard. So basically climbing up the Earth's Shard. This one was done mainly on GSM and Wi-Fi. We had planned to use the Wi-Fi of the building, but we discovered that the outside of the building doesn't have that good receptions. Who knows? We should have planned ahead. But the other one that we tried to do was, before this, I had to set up a live streaming event from a band that was going to play on the Rainbow Warrior. So Rainbow Warrior was in the UK. I was sort of like parked in the Thames, and they wanted to live stream a band. So this is where this comes in. So this great piece of art was actually in the Design Museum, because that's where we parked next to, and they said, yes, we could use their Wi-Fi. So I had that parked in the Design Museum, pointed at the ship to make a connection to the internet. Small problem, did that in the morning, tide goes down, ship goes down. Luckily, each sort of set of masts has its own access point, so we just had to fiddle it around. So yeah, live streaming is fun. The 2020s. So where are we now? So yeah, we're still using anything and everything. So bit of light painting with lasers, annoying the police with remote control vehicles. I think we probably strapped a remote control for camera to any vehicle. Governments these days, they like doing things like legal lawsuits and changing the laws. And unfortunately, 2023, we got declared to be an illegal organization in Russia, and that we had to shut down the Russian office. We have the SLAPP suit now in the US for a horrendous amount of money. But we're still out there. So drones, lots of good stuff with drones. GIS, so lots of GIS, lots of satellite data now. It's cheap and easy to get hold of. Communications, low Earth orbit, satellites, Starlink, things like that make life a lot easier. We're still hacking the tech. We're still collecting the data. We're still finding things to do. And yeah, we're still there. And I think at that point, if there's any questions, I've taken them now.